Hello and welcome. Well, politically, the last week has been full of plenty of drama as talks between poll strategist Prashant Kishor and the Congress party looked like there was actually going to be a deal between both sides and possibly an entry into the Congress for Kishor himself. However, it all broke down pretty dramatically yesterday with both sides issuing statements that they were stepping back from this proposal. What exactly went wrong? Prashant Kishor gave a very detailed presentation to Congress leaders on what he thought was a good roadmap to revive the party, which many Congress leaders have acknowledged was detailed and, as they put it, very good. So where did it break down? Is it that Prashant Kishor wanted full free hand, something that the Congress wasn't willing to give? Was there a stumbling block over who should be heading the Congress party as we go into the next general election? And how exactly then does the Congress look at the roadmap for itself? Joining us now on NDTV is Mr. P Chidambaram, former finance minister and the senior Congress leader who headed the Congress committee that Sonia Gandhi formed to look at Prashant Kishor's proposal in some detail. Mr. Chidambaram, thank you very much for joining us. You're breaking your silence on this big story today. Why did talks between your party and PK break down ultimately?
Well, I heard your intro. One correction, I was not head of any group. I was a member of the 8-member group. There was no head. And the second correction is there was no breakdown. The presentation, as you said, had impressive data, and he gave his own analysis of the data, which I thought was a very sound analysis of the data. At the end of the presentation, and after we reviewed it, and we formed our own opinion on what are actionable, we offered him a place in the Empowered Action Group. He said that he was not in a position to be part of an Empowered Action Group, and therefore the matter was closed. Now, what other ideas he has, what other opportunities are available, I don't know.
Is it that he didn't want to be part of a group, but that he wanted to have a freer hand to be, in a sense, not accountable to a collective leadership in the Congress and only have a direct channel of communication with the party president?
I don't know, because he did not give any reasons. He said, thank you, it's an honor, but I decline your offer to be a member of the Empowered Action Group.
So when your committee met and discussed his proposals, what was the general sort of consensus within your group? You know, what were the arguments for and against, firstly, his presentation, and then secondly, his own role in the Congress, potentially?
No, we were not discussing his role. We were only reviewing the presentation. And as I said, he has got impressive data, which he has collected over several months, perhaps. And he has his own analytics of the data, the analysis of the data. To me, it was very good. Now, you may agree with some conclusions, you may not agree with some conclusions, but there were several points which are actionable, on which we can take the process forward. And we intend to do that.
There were some reports today that one of the sticking points that emerged was his proposal reportedly to have Priyanka Gandhi Vadra as the Congress president, which was not acceptable to a large section of the party, and that's where things broke down. Is there any truth in that?
Wrong.
Completely wrong.
I didn't hear anything of that in the time I spent with the group with him. I did not hear anything of that.
In the draft presentation that was leaked to the media a few days ago from last year, one of his interesting ideas was to have Mrs. Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, as the Congress president, but to create the post of a working president, in which he said should ideally be a non-Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi heading a parliamentary board, and Priyanka Gandhi as General Secretary Coordination. Was that the proposal that he gave you as well?
I did not hear any such proposal in the presentation. The presentation was confined to data and the analysis of the data.
Didn't it talk about who should lead the Congress party?
No, that was not part of the presentation.
At all?
Well,
Now,
to the best of my knowledge and recollection.
So why do you think, I mean, in your view, why do you think then it didn't work out with him?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he wants to still retain his independence as a consultant, advisor. See, after all, he is advising several other political parties, or he or his organization, IPAC, is advising. In fact, they signed an agreement with the TRS the day before we made the offer. I believe he is continuing to advise the Trinamool Congress. He's perhaps advising Jagan Reddy, the YRCP. I don't know. But he probably wants to retain his independent advisory role with other political parties. But this is speculation. I don't know really the answer to your question.
Was that a deal breaker in a sense for the Congress? Because Mr. Digvijay Singh spoke to us just last week, and he said the fact that there is a lack of ideological commitment on Prashant Kishor's side, and that he's worked with other parties, that had created misgivings amongst many congressmen and women.
No, you're using words which I didn't hear. We made an offer to him day before yesterday, join the Congress party and become a member of the Empowered Action Group. That would require a certain political and ideological commitment, isn't it?
So you actually made him an offer to join the party?
Yeah, but how can he be a member of the Empowered Action Group without being a member of the party? That I thought was a given.
Right, and what was the position that you had in mind for him in the party?
A member of the Empowered Action Group.
Okay.
The Empowered Action Group would have reported to the Congress president.
The sequence is important here because you're saying that the proposal to him was made only day before yesterday, which he declined.
The formal proposal was made only day before yesterday. Yeah, that's correct.
So were his meetings with KCR over the weekend a factor that led to this sort of uneasiness on both sides? Did that annoy the Congress party that the IPAC signed up with the TRS?
I don't think that was a factor. We heard his presentation and we made the offer. Yes, we think that we can work together. We offer you to become a member of the Empowered Action Group, and it's your decision now.
Despite the meeting with KCR, despite the IPAC TRS deal, that offer was made?
I don't think that was a factor. I don't think that is a factor.
That's interesting because there was a section of your own party, some leaders who even went public with their sort of anger about that, questioning his commitment, whether he should be admitted into the party. I mean, would you say there was a lot of uneasiness?
All that is before the offer. If he had accepted the offer, let's look at the opposite conclusion. If he had accepted the offer, he would have become a member of the Congress party.
And he would have had to be committed to the Congress.
And he would be a member of the Empowered Action Group. He would have to work along with other Congress leaders or Congress functionaries. And I suppose if I invite you to join the Congress party, and if you join the Congress party, I'll have to assume that you are committed to the Congress party and its ideology, isn't it?
You think that that was a factor given his personality? As you said, he wanted to retain his independence, possibly to have his relationships with other parties. He claims, by the way, that he's not associated with IPAC anymore.
That's true, but then the fact is that his IPAC has has entered into agreements with a few parties. So he has to work out what his relationship with IPAC is after he had accepted the Congress's invitation, isn't it? All that didn't arise.
I get a sense from your comments that this chapter is not closed yet.
I don't know if it was open or closed. All I know is this offer was made and he declined the offer. We didn't ask him reasons. He declined the offer.
But is it possible, you think, that this is a conversation that can take place again somewhere down the road?
I don't know. This conversation has taken place 6 months ago. This conversation has taken place
But the doors aren't closed.
I don't know. I don't know, and that's not very material. We have to get on with the job now of getting the party ready for 2024.
So let's get on with that. You said that there were a number of proposals in his presentation which were very good, very data-driven. What did you think in particular stood out in terms of what the Congress can realistically do?
See, I thought, this is my view, I thought he had very impressive data about elections, voting patterns by segments, by demographic groups, and candidates of the Congress party, the history of candidates. He had very impressive data. Apparently, he has a team which has gathered the data and put it together over several months. That was very impressive. I don't think in-house we have that data. I don't think, I don't know of any place in the Congress party which has that data in that understandable form or retrievable form.
And what would you say then is the immediate priority for the party at the moment? Is it to sort out the leadership issue, have these organizational elections and really get on with it?
See, leadership is an issue, and I'm sure it will be addressed by the Congress president during the course of the election process which is underway and which will culminate in August. We are already at the end of April. I'm sure the leadership issue will be resolved. But I'm more concerned about getting the party ready. You can't wait for the August 2022 election of the Congress president to get the party ready, because we will be too close to Gujarat and Himachal. And anyway, we would have lost 3 months. My thrust is, my appeal is that we should get the party ready today. We know. We have heard the presentation for 2-3 days. We have our own internal discussions and analysis. Let's get on with the job and let's get the party ready.
Get it ready how? What would you like to see it do?
Organizationally, in terms of political messaging, in terms of communication, in terms of election management. For all this requires dedicated departments which are populated by political leaders as well as professional staff. See, you can't have today, in the year 2022, election management without professional staff. You need people working out of a building for 12 hours a day. Have you read the Obama political organization, which reached out to the last voter, and they knew exactly where that voter is, in which precinct, in which town, and how he will vote. They had that kind of a database. Now,
so are you worried that the Congress is not doing this fast enough? All these issues.
No party is doing it. No party has done this. Regional parties have done it in a rudimentary manner in some states. They still work with paper, they still work with electoral rolls, they still work with books, notebooks, and that kind of thing. But for a national party to do it at a national level today, you need this data in a retrievable and usable form.
I think it's interesting that you say don't wait for who your leader is going to be.
That will happen.
You need to get your act together before that.
Absolutely.
So what is it going to take to do that? And look, I'll come back to the leadership issue because it is important. And I asked you what I asked you actually soon after the assembly election results. Is it possible for the Congress to look at a leadership beyond the Gandhi family, as some of your colleagues like Kapil Sibal have suggested?
I don't know. We leave it to the AICC.
You have an opinion, I'm sure. You're a senior leader. You must have an opinion.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you how I vote secretly.
Okay, that's interesting. But is it possible to look at life beyond?
Let the AICC decide. To me, it's an issue, but an issue that is blown out of proportion. It's an issue, but it's blown out of proportion.
Why?
The AICC will decide. You see, I've said this before, who is the party leader can only be decided by the party leaders and the rank and file. Suppose I vote my opinion, but I'll have to reflect my constituents, my rank and file, my workers, my Youth Congress workers, my Mahila Congress workers, my NSUI unit in my constituency, or my erstwhile constituency, my district. I know what they think. And my vote has to reflect those views. Who is the leader of the Congress party can only be decided by Congress members. It cannot be decided by the media. It certainly cannot be decided by the opposition parties. And it certainly cannot be decided by armchair critics, however well-meaning and well-disposed they are to the Congress party.
Sure, but there is a track record one looks at, and Rahul Gandhi's track record is not very impressive as the leader of the Congress party. He doesn't even seem very interested in being leader of the Congress party. He's not here in the country again at the moment. And sources close to Prashant Kishor have actually cited his absence from all these meetings you all have been having as reflecting a certain aloofness in him to engage even with someone like Prashant Kishor. So therefore, I'm asking you very honestly, is Rahul Gandhi the right man for the job?
That's your opinion. You've expressed your opinion. When the time comes for me to express my opinion, I will, but I'm certainly not going to tell you how I'll vote at the AICC session. There will be an election, and a Congress president will be elected.
Let me ask you about alliances, which was another thing that Prashant Kishor's presentation, I believe, stressed on. You spoke to us a few weeks ago and you said something very interesting, that the next general election would have to be fought state by state, where the Congress would have to get into smart alliances and possibly allow other parties to take the lead in those alliances, whether it's the TMC or the Aam Aadmi Party. Now, has that been discussed at all within your party? What was the sort of response to that?
Yes, it has been discussed. We recognize that in many states, or roughly one half of the states, we are the lead party to take on the BJP. In the remaining one half of the states, we are either the junior partner in an alliance or a regional party is the lead opposition to the BJP. And we have to strike deals, coalitions with the regional party. For example, we have a coalition with the regional party, which is the lead party, say in Tamil Nadu, in Jharkhand, and in Maharashtra. We don't have an alliance with a regional party, the lead party, say in Andhra Pradesh, in Odisha. I'm not saying we should or should not. I'm just giving you basic facts. There were the three categories of states. One, where we are the lead party, and we have to win support. In the second category, a small number of states where we are not the first party, but we are the second party, and we are in a coalition. The third group is the states where we are not the lead party and we don't have a coalition. So we'll have to address these states on a state-specific strategy, which I think is well recognized within the Congress leadership.
How do you look at the rise of the Aam Aadmi Party, having won in Punjab and eyeing now Gujarat, Himachal, looking to expand its base, trying to fill a vacuum that they believe the Congress has created in these states? Do you see them as a challenge?
See, I'm still not able to figure out the ideological, political positioning of the Aam Aadmi Party. I don't know, because sometimes they appear to be liberal, sometimes they appear to be as pro-Hindutva as the BJP. So I don't know. So unless there is greater clarity about the Aam Aadmi Party's ideological positioning, political positioning, it'll be very difficult to comment.
Let me ask you today on what the Prime Minister has said about fuel prices coming to this issue. The Prime Minister asking states to cut VAT and saying that, we told states months ago to do this, they're not doing it, and essentially putting the burden back on them. Why does that make you laugh?
Because it's a completely unacceptable suggestion. The only taxing power which gives some revenues to the state are, one, VAT and excise duties on liquor. The rest are pretty irrelevant taxes. Property taxes go to the municipality. Entertainment tax goes to the municipality. The state's own revenues are really made up of VAT and excise duty on liquor. Now, why would a state give up the power to tax, power to impose VAT, when the record and the history of the last 8 years makes them distrust the central government. This government has run the GST Council in an authoritarian manner. The GST Council is not run in a democratic manner. It is using its voting power to bulldoze, and that's the
word of the day, or the flavor of the month, whatever.
Flavor of the month. Bulldoze the non-BJP opposition. Number two, this government has not kept its promises about sharing the GST revenue. This government is on the verge, I think in a couple of months we will know the truth, going back on its promise to compensate for the loss of GST revenue. The loss in revenue as a result of switch over to the GST.
So originally, it's a trust issue between centre and states, or that states just can't afford to lower VAT?
The states can't. Look at the states' own. See, every state has got central taxes, share, states' own revenue, grants, and borrowing. The proportion of states' own revenue, SOR, as a proportion of the total revenues of the state is dwindling. Therefore, why would the state give up even the little revenue that it is getting?
Okay. Let me ask you about this, because just as I was coming here to meet you, the government put out a note based on a statement you had made about their fuel tax collections. You had said they were 26.5 lakh crores from 2014 to 2021. However, they have said that the total development expenditure by the centre was a whopping 90.9 lakh crores. That includes 26 lakh crores in the form of capital expenditure to modernize infrastructure and to create productive assets, and therefore that you, Mr. Chidambaram, have missed out basic data points.
I have not missed out anything. Look at my tweet. The tweet was on 12th of April. I'm glad they woke up after 15 days, be that as it may. I've given the number. Their claim is 90.9 lakh crore on developmental expenditure in 8 years, and you compare it with 49.2 lakh crore spent by the UPA government. Wait for the next 8 years. It'll be more than 90.9. And the next 8 years, it'll be more than that number. This is a no-brainer. The total budget increases every year. The total expenditure increases every year. Therefore, the item-wise expenditure will also increase every year on each item, except maybe an exception. Now, the point is really not the absolute number you are spending. Out of the total expenditure, what is the proportion going to defense? What is the proportion going to salary? What is the proportion going to social sector expenditure? If you look at that proportion for social sector expenditure, in the UPA government, it was 9% of total expenditure. Under the BJP government, the average is 5% of the total expenditure. And I've got the graph from the same page. This graph has been constructed from the same page of the RBI report, which the Finance Ministry is relying upon. From the same page, I've constructed this graph.
Okay. All right. Last question,
So
Mr. Chidambaram.
Technically, you're right. That 90.9 is larger than 49.2 is right. But mathematically, your conclusion is wrong. 90.9 as a proportion of total expenditure is only 5%, whereas 49.2 as a proportion of total expenditure is 9%. A social sector.
Quick last question. You had the LIC IPO today. It's come at a reduced value. How do you see, the IPO?
I think it's a wrong time to do an IPO. I've just received a couple of critiques of the LIC IPO. I have not studied them yet. I will tonight, and I will perhaps respond tomorrow in greater detail. But it's a wrong time to do an IPO. First, you have cut down the size of the IPO. Secondly, you've lowered the offer price. So both indicate that this is not the most propitious time to do an IPO. Why are they so desperate? They missed the 31st March deadline. They are claiming that direct taxes revenue are robust. They are growing at a very fast pace. What is the desperation to do an IPO in the first month or first 2 months of the new financial year. If you are short of resources, you can always do it later. Always in April and May, the government is flush with money. There's no lack of money in April and May. It's only when you start spending, you'll run out of money. You may run out of money. I think this is a completely wrong time to do an IPO.
All right, we'll wait for the detailed response tomorrow as well. Mr. Chidambaram, thank you for joining us on NDTV. Thank you.